Generations. Guys, if you're going to talk reused footage in Star Trek, this has to be the one. This is annoying. As we probably all know, at the end of Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, the Enterprise and the Excelsior overwhelm Chang's bird of prey with a barrage of torpedo fire. This causes the ship to explode. It's cool, right? It is cool. In Star Trek Generations, one torpedo, okay, fair enough, torpedo technology has developed over the years, takes out the Duras sisters' bird of prey. It's exactly the same explosion, exactly the same shot. It is not simply the fact that this is so obviously reused footage that's annoying, and again, in the very next film, the problem is that the whole point of it standing out in The Undiscovered Country is that it was something we hadn't seen before. It was so detailed. It was great. And the next film, that's frustrating. That just didn't work. And it's almost to the point where I'd nearly look away during Generations at this point when that's happening. And I like Generations, but this is just bloody unforgivable. It's one of these things where on a reused footage list, this was always going to be number one.
Anyone reusing anything is, of course, a terrible person who should be called out immediately because, we've never, ever reused anything for any reason, ever. Basically what we're saying is that sometimes reusing stuff just makes perfect sense. Now, you don't want to, be all up in somebody's face about it. So, with that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and here are 10 times Star Trek reused ships, and hoped you wouldn't notice. Number 10. Romulan Scout Ship, Science Vessel, Narada. The Romulan Scout Ship was designed by Rick Sternbach, debuting in the Defector. The design was based on Andrew Probert's earlier Dideridex-class warbird, echoing the green colour scheme, wingspan and forward module. This initial design was more obviously a small support vessel, evidenced by cockpit windows at the front. The next phase would then introduce the Romulan Science Vessel. For this, the studio model was altered, with the forward module being changed, and the more obvious cockpit design being removed. At the aft of the ship, a hammerhead-style crescent was added, this time serving as a section similar to the sensor pod on a Nebula-class ship. The ship would then return in Favourite Son. This time, the only significant change was to the colour of the ship. Sternbach himself was less than thrilled with the model's continual changes, lamenting that once the designs left his desk, he had no control over what happened to them. When it came to the Science Vessel, and the Narada specifically, these were quite obviously the same design, a Romulan one, and stood out in the episode. Number 9. Mercenary Ship, Miradoran Raider, Teresian Ship. The distinctive vessel that debuted in the episode Vortex is perhaps best recognised as Arctis Baran's pirate ship, despite that being its second appearance. The Miradoran Raider Theta class was designed by Ricardo F. Delgado and was labelled as an alien concept or a raptor. The design, striking as it was, inevitably returned. Gambit sees Picard and Riker taken captive aboard the vessel, which at this point is described as roughly 1/4 the length of the Enterprise D. For this instance, there may actually have been an on-screen explanation as to the reuse of the design. With Baran commanding a mercenary crew, they may simply have stolen or paid outright for a Miradoran Raider. What is a little harder to explain is the return of the vessel in the Delta Quadrant. Here it takes the form of a Teresian ship, making it another reused studio model to appear in the episode Favourite Son. The ship saw no adjustments, either in outward design or relative scale, to suggest that this was simply a similar shape of ship. At least the Romulan science ship went through a colour change. Number 8. Federation Fighter, Kraylor Warship. Jim Martin designed the Federation fighter for the Deep Space Nine episode The Maquis. It was built with Star Wars as an inspiration, something Doug Drexler would later joke gave people acid indigestion. The model would return in Preemptive Strike, again used by the Maquis, before they would make their debut as true Federation vessels in A Time to Stand. For these uses, having the ship appear with the Maquis and Starfleet suggested that these vessels had simply been co-opted by the terrorist organisation, so having them play multiple roles made sense. Slightly more difficult to explain, once again, was their appearance in the Delta Quadrant. In Nightingale, Harry Kim takes command of a Kraylor medical ship that bears a striking resemblance to these small attack ships. The design was altered to give the Nightingale a larger feel, adding decks to the ship via multiple lights along with the suggestion of a beefier engine. The ship would return a second time in Voyager, though this is somewhat excusable. In The Void, an Anari warship bearing the same configuration is encountered by Voyager, though the Anari had been established as combatants within a war with the Kraylor in the earlier episode. Much like the Klingons and Romulans, who's to say there weren't some shared ideas between the two? Number 7. Karama ship, Bajoran Impulse ship, Antarian ship. The Karama ship was designed by John Eaves for Deep Space Nine in the episode Starship Down. It was constructed as a physical model and as a CGI model, with the latter returning several times during the franchise. Despite the Karama being Gamma Quadrant dwellers, their ship turned up in both the Alpha and Delta quadrants. Shadows and Symbols sees Colonel Kira form a blockade around the Bajoran moon Derna, with her fleet containing 2 such vessels. In notes that were excised from the episode, it was suggested that these may, in fact, have been Karama ships left behind by the Dominion. The CGI model would then go on
to new friends. New friends. New friends.
They're gonna kill us.
We'll send you the bill for the therapy.
Speak no evil. Rated R.
Believe in a care experience that celebrates better outcomes and the magic of childhood. Children's Nebraska. Believe in better.
to appear in the episode Drive, this time portraying an Antarian vessel that rendezvous with Voyager. It also appears as an unnamed alien ship in Natural Law as well. The CGI made its final to-date appearance as a transport vessel in Enterprise, a good 200 years before Starfleet encountered the Karama or the discovery of the Bajoran wormhole. Great minds. Number 6. Grumal Necrit Freighter Klingon cargo ship. The Grumal freighter was one of John Eaves' first designs upon working for Star Trek. Being a Cardassian design, he took initial inspiration from Rick Sternbach's Galar-class warships, beginning with a similar forward section. However, the producers weren't too keen on this idea. They wanted the freighter to have a more industrial look. Eaves flipped the design, softening the wings from the Galar class and dipped them. The distinctive Cardassian fork was now at the front of the ship, with huge cargo boxes making up the bulk of the core. The bridge was moved to the back of the ship, taking inspiration from real-world oil tankers. The studio model was then built, first appearing in the episode Return to Grace. It would return repainted in the Voyager episode Fair Trade. Later, Sons and Daughters saw it adapt a final time to become Klingon in nature. It was given another new paint job, with new warp engines added to the aft wings. The effects manager for the episode, David Stipes, wasn't too keen on the reuse, adapted as it was by Tony Meininger. He rationalised that the use of the design, as though the Klingons had captured these Cardassian freighters as trophies of war. Number 5. Klingon D7 battlecruiser, Romulan battlecruiser. The ship that would come to be known as the D7 class battlecruiser, designed by Matt Jeffries, had a very unusual start in life. It was designed at the urging of AMT models so that they might have a companion model to market alongside their model kit of the USS Enterprise. As such, it was the reverse of most processes. The toy came first before the ship would fly. Jeffries recalled that he worked on the design at home as there was neither time nor budget to do so at the studio. After numerous attempts, he based the ship on a manta ray, and the ship was almost done. The first shots of the model were done for the episode Elan of Troyes, firmly establishing it as a Klingon vessel. However, the model, which had delighted producers for the original series' third season, was quickly inserted wherever possible, including as a Romulan vessel in the Enterprise incident. A scheduling mix-up meant that this new Klingon ship, designed around Klingon people to be marketed as a Klingon battlecruiser, was shown first as a Romulan ship. The remastered versions of the original series fixed this by introducing the ship a little earlier and giving those seen in the Enterprise incident a more distinctly Romulan pattern underneath. But this was a model that had one of the strangest journeys to screen in the entire franchise. Number 4. Tyrellian plague ship, Katarian vessel. The distinctive Tyrellian plague ship that appeared in Haven was one of designer Andrew Probert's favourite projects for the Next Generation. He recalled that, after the Enterprise itself, this model gave him some of his fondest memories, as it had been a collaboration with Gene Roddenberry himself. Probert had become stuck when it came to the overall design. He knew that he wanted it to be different from the standard engines at the back shape that tended to dominate starships, so he came up with the idea of placing the engines at the front of the ship. He also based his design on Herman Zimmerman's plans for the main bridge, allowing him to build around it. It was Roddenberry who suggested moving the power source to the middle of the ship, which led to the spherical design as seen in the episode. This would be the only appearance of the ship in this configuration. The nose was subsequently altered to sport a more triangular shape, while the hull was removed from the ship's centre, then covered with deck plating. In this shape, it returned several more times, including as the Qatarian vessel in the game, the Hunter's ship in Captive Pursuit, and the Zalconian ship